If you want to master the art of serving, which is the ability to serve effortless and fast serves with accuracy and consistency, then you have to understand that there is a fundamental difference between hitting a ground stroke or a volley and the serve. If I'm hitting a forehand and the ball is coming towards me at certain speed and height at an angle with rotation, then when I'm hitting the ball I actually have to keep my racket head quite steady so that I can find the ball in this contact zone and guide it towards the target. If I accelerate the tip of the racket, that will make my racket change the angle all the time, and that's going to make it very difficult for me to control the ball. Now we usually bring this same idea to the serve and we try to steer the ball with the racket head towards the target. But the serve is very different to a ground stroke, and that's because the ball is almost still and we're always serving from the same distance to the target. So when we play forehands or backhands or volleys, we're moving around the court and we have to adjust based on the distance, based on the speed of the incoming ball and so on. So we need a lot of adjustment, and that's why we have to keep the racket head steady, because it's so difficult to hit the ball in exactly the right spot. And so we make it a little bit easier for us, and so we extend the racket through the contact zone. And it's not that just club players do that, professional players do that too. So if you look at a slow motion of a professional player hitting a forehand, you will see that the racket face does not change the angle for a little while. And so if we bring this idea to the serve, it means that we lock the serve, we will lock the wrist, and we will not be able to use the maximum power that we can produce. And so when we serve, we actually want to accelerate the racket in a circular path. And so the main difference between a ground stroke and a volley compared to the serve is that with those strokes we accelerate the racket face, but when we serve we can think about accelerating the tip of the racket, because we want to generate as much rotational momentum as possible. So it's very important that you keep this in mind when you're serving, that the key is to actually think about a circular path of the racket and think and imagine, have a mental image that in this circular path you will just meet the ball and then the ball will fly away, rather than you steering the ball into the target. To better illustrate the idea of the circular path, I'm going to use the total serve again, but you can use any training tool that has a weight attached to the rope. And so if I do a few serves with the total serve, you can see that it's making a circular path. And this gives me a really good feel and idea how to accelerate my racket. So you should be accelerating the racket along this circular path. And you can see that if I accelerate the total serve, that it's traveling in a circular path and that it's pulling me. And that's one of the main differences also between an unlocked serve and a locked serve, because a locked serve will give you the feel of pushing. So you will feel that you are behind the racket and that you're generating all the force. But an unlocked serve gives you the feel of a pull, because you generate so much velocity of the racket head. After you contact the ball, the racket will actually pull you, and it also tells you that you're relaxed enough, that you're allowing this pull. And so that's another thing why the total serve is so useful, is because it gives you this feel of a pull. And so if I try to make the total serve go straight, it's almost impossible. That's why it's really good training tool to feel the difference between a circular path and a linear path. If I try to do something similar with the racket, then you can see that it's quite easy to make the racket go in a linear way, and that's what we tend to do. But with the serve, we should accelerate the racket in a more circular way, because that will help us generate more speed, and we will also activate more muscles. And that's why you see top pros oftentimes finish in this position, or if there's a frame in the whole video of the serve, you can see that for a split moment they're like this. So they're not with the straight arm, and their wrist is not locked, the wrist is going down. So even sometimes a player might have quite a straight arm, but the wrist is pointed down, so the wrist is doing something, or the racket face is pointed down. The racket is not in the same line as the arm, and so that means that the player is actually trying to accelerate the tip of the racket. And so try to feel the difference between pushing and a straight line, or actually throwing, because the serve is a throw, throwing and feeling the pull of the racket, and also accelerating with the tip of the racket. And the next step would be to hit some balls. But again, as with many other drills in this video course, you shouldn't aim into the court, because that might trigger control too early. And so you should just try and feel how it is to hit the ball when you're trying to accelerate the tip of your racket. So here's one example. So just practice that and try to feel the difference between a linear path and a more circular path, and you'll be on the right way to unlocking your serve.